Hi, I'm Kristen and this is Scrap Fabric Love, and I'm here today with
Tom the Colorblind Quilter.
And we are embarking on a sew day to put together our second collaboration quilt. We did this last year. We're entering the 2-person category in the Festival of Quilts, and this year we've gone for a rainbow theme that we're hoping is going to be easier to put together than last year, yeah?
Yes, yeah, and we're actually earlier this year, so we're not rushing.
Oh, are we? Okay, good.
Yeah, hopefully on time.
Yeah, so it's like beginning of July and we have to get it to them by the 15th of July, I think is what it is. So what did we name it?
Yeah, so we called it Bridging the Bobbins, and it's supposed to be a collaboration between us to show the different styles. So you're kind of modern, improv, scrappy style, and my more traditional piece quilting.
Yeah, because we love each other's quilts, but we probably would never make one that looked the same as each other. So it's kind of about what does that look like when it comes together, and kind of celebrating the difference generally, which is we all need to do more of these days.
Yeah, and it's kind of, looking at it on the floor over there, it's kind of cool.
I know, yeah. So we did this all basically over WhatsApp and phone and pictures. And now this is the day where we're putting it all together and then we can send it off. So we'll show you how we do that. So last year's collab is documented in a 3-part series across our 2 channels. But for that one, we did kind of a medallion quilt. And we had some math issues and the day was long as a result. So this year we decided to make it much simpler and focus on a row quilt. We looked at a number of row quilts just for inspiration. But the one I think we took the most inspiration from was this Rainbow Rose quilt by Coriander Quilts. We didn't want to follow anybody's pattern particularly, but this one definitely, I think if you look at the 2, you can see the starting point of the idea coming from this one. So I wanted to give her a shout out here. We decided to use the Pride rainbow colors and take 3 colors each. So we were going to have 6 rows and then some sashing in between them. I worked out the math for the columns or rows, however you want to call them. And they were 6.5 by 48.5 inches unfinished, which meant 8 6.5-inch unfinished blocks for him. And then I kind of just used the total measurement of the row to make my bits. So Tom had the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, and he went for some traditional blocks, a shoe fly, a pinwheel, and a 9-patch. He plotted it all out in pre-quilt and then just left spaces for my orange, green, and purple rows. So Tom used all Tilda solids for his colors, and I also bought the white from Tilda so that our background colors were coordinated. As well as our styles being different, our processes are different too. So Tom mapped up all his blocks in pre-quilt first, did some very sensible chain piecing of units, and then put all of his blocks together basically at the same time. So by the time he had finished the blocks for one, he'd finished the blocks for all 3. So he had his 3 rows done before mine, even though I had kind of started on it all ahead of him. So I started on my green row first, but rather than using one green, I went scrappy, took my green crumb box and just did a whole bunch of crumb piecing. And then I cut out using an AccuQuilt die, some triangles, ridiculously sewed a snake out of them, who knows why, and then did some reverse applique with the total length of the row I was aiming for. If you want to see more about how this came together, there's actually a whole other video on my channel called like I made a crumb snake. So that was the one that I beat Tom on. I finished this before he'd started, but then he ran away with it and got the efficiency prize. So I started an orange again, scrappy obviously, unplanned pretty much obviously. The basic concept I was going with was I was going to try and do the thing where you cut strips sort of on a curve and then you just follow that curve, like you overlap them slightly so that the curves are the same, and then you stitch them together and iron. And what I was going to do was kind of keep adding bits on the side at different angles so that it got longer and longer until I got to the length of the row. And then I was going to kind of add similar curvy strips on the outside in the background strip. So it would be, it would all be sort of this curvy, but in the end I could straighten it out into the 6.5 by 48.5 inches. That was the basic idea. But I did eventually get it kind of the length. This is it. You can kind of see the start of with the white background. This was all unplanned. That's same with the green one. But anyway, and I just wasn't totally loving how it was coming together. I did persist with it until it was the right length. But at that point, I kind of stepped away and didn't work on it for a while because I wasn't really happy with it. So for my purple row, I decided to make it simpler for myself. I designed a kind of half fan foundation paper pieced pattern in EQ8. I set out the size so that I could have basically 6 half blocks and they would fill the length of the row that Tom was using 8 blocks for. So they were kind of longer, narrow kind of blocks, I guess. Well, same width as his, but they look longer and narrower. And 2 together make a kind of half fan. So each block was like a quarter fan, if that makes sense. You'll see them at the end. But this is my 2 loves are kind of improv, absolutely no plan, and FPP, which is basically like sewing by numbers. So those are the 2 ways I like to roll, basically. So this purple row came together, needless to say, much quicker and easier than the orange one, which I will come back to. The orange one did not stay that way. So we're going to come back and see that one in a minute. So here's what 2 blocks look like. And then obviously I joined them and used 6 of them to make the row the length it needed to be. Then in the last minute deadline crunch before Tom came over for our sew day, I went back to working on the orange row. So I wasn't happy with it. I suppose I could have kept fiddling with it, but I decided to just go for a plan B. This is me putting pieces of Flexi Fuse fusible onto my AccuQuilt feather die, and then laying out those shapes on top of that Tilda white that we were both using, which I had cut out to be the exact size that I needed the row to be. So this is me just seeing how many of these little feather shapes I can fit onto the row. And then once I had enough, I fused those onto the back of the row that I wasn't happy with, and cut those out so that I still had the piecing I had done, just in sort of smaller chunks. Then I spent, quite frankly, a ridiculous amount of time thinking up different layouts for these feathers on this row, changing them over and over again until I finally found one that I liked. And then I just used a kind of satin stitch on my FAF Quilt Expression 720 and stitched them all on. So it's basically just applique in the end. So this was the final layout before I stitched it on. And then just in time for Tom to come, I had all 3 of my rows ready. So this is what we were looking at over on the floor when we did that intro, and we were saying it was looking good just lying on the floor in rows. But of course, then we still had to add the sashing and deal with a tiny bit, literally just a tiny bit of length disparity between the rows. But it absolutely went together much more smoothly than the year before, because really it only was on the length where you could have any issues, because the width didn't really matter. We were deciding what width the quilt was. So if one of our rows was a little bit wider, not a big deal. And in the end, it was just like a tiny bit. I think we had to add a little bit more sashing to one of the rows or 2 of the rows or something like that. But really, we were done so much quicker. I think the whole thing to put together, we were only at it for maybe 4 hours. And I think that included making the binding. Whereas last time we started early, we finished late. It was it was a great big old hoo-ha. So this was a much more chill sew day. And this was the quilt top finished, and Tom held it up for us. We were really quite pleased with it. I quilted our quilt last year, so Tom took this one home this time and did this wonderful straight line quilting on it. I think it turned out great. And he also put the binding on and got it sent off. So that was us done. And then you might have seen it in my video about the Festival of Quilts. So it was hanging up there and we got to take a photo with it. Didn't win any prizes, but we had a lot of fun making it and we really liked doing this together again. So we've already got a brainstorming of an idea for next year, but it's slightly more complicated. So we might have to start a tiny bit earlier. I hope you enjoyed watching that all come together. And if you have not subscribed to Scrap Fabric Love or the Colorblind Quilter, we hope you'll consider it, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks for spending time with us. Bye.